it's been the long held belief of this podcast, and I have pounded the table that you cannot build a program exclusively through the transfer portal. USC was Exhibit A this season, along with Colorado, although I think Colorado has deeper issues than just trying to bring kids in from the portal. Um, but there are certain positions that it certainly feels like, hey, if you went out and got this position group, if you beefed up this position group through the portal, that would be great. For me, Florida State doing it at defensive line was a great move. Obviously, Jared Verse and company coming in to help the Noles to what should have been a playoff berth and an undefeated season. And yet, we've seen it also fail with teams like LSU going to the portal for their entire secondary. Didn't exactly work out for the Tigers this year. So, if you're the new GM of a college football program, is there one position that you maybe think, hey, if we don't get this through the high school recruits, I feel good about going there, going to the transfer portal, I should say, to fill those needs?
I think the defensive line for me personally is the biggest spot where you can really do that. It's I don't want to make it sound like it's not a technical position because there is a lot of technique involved in being a defensive lineman. But when you're trying to build, like your example with LSU secondary was an absolute disaster this year.
Yep.
Probably the biggest reason, probably the biggest thing that held their team back. They couldn't pressure the quarterback much either, but uh, the secondary definitely let them down. And for me, that's definitely where you would probably do the bulk of your work. Would be on the defensive line. I also think that you can do that at the linebacker position as well, especially as we have these defensive schemes that become more kind of streamlined out of these coaching, off these coaching trees. Because at this point, I mean, the Nick Saban coaching tree extends over what seems like half of college football.
Right.
At this point, uh, and we're probably going to start to see that with the Kirby Smarts of the world as we, as we go on over time. But yeah, for me, you look at the defensive line, and then that's the biggest spot where you can build it. And then also, I think you can really plug and play a quarterback. The quarterback just has to really fit your scheme, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's the offensive skill positions like running back, wide receiver. I think you're always going to be able to find those guys. Like, that's the other thing Florida State did, right? They beefed up on the defensive line, like you guys are saying, but their receiving core, Coleman and the
Johnny
other guy's
Wilson.
name, yeah, just amazing pickups through the portal that really took that offense to the next level. But I think what Florida State is doing that I think is going to carry them through to the next few years under Mike Norvell is they're supplementing that with high school recruiting, right? They got the guys in the portal to put them on the map, and now their recruiting rankings for next year, top 5 in the country. So they're not going anywhere. They're going to be able to beef up their depth and then pick and choose still through the portal to put them over the top.
Do you guys think that the only way to really excel going forward, and I'm talking 3, 4, 5 years down the line, is to hire a general manager of college football ops?
It,
Uh,
it's Go ahead, Jake.
yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, a really good example of it, Texas A&M did it just the other day. They hired, pretty much what is a GM. Actually, I think that's his official title is general manager. Because there are so many different responsibilities when it comes to looking at the transfer portal and at high school recruiting. That's a lot of division of responsibility that needs to be done. And so when you have an organization that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we see these coaching staffs grow, um, you have to have somebody overlooking it because the reality is that head coach already has so much on their plate, and the last thing that you need is one aspect of your team falling apart because there was disorganization in another part of your program.
Yeah, I think, it's going to be fascinating to see how those type of hires play out because if we know one thing about most college football coaches, they do not like to give up control. So it seems like some of the best coaches though are great delegators, right? They
Yeah.
hire a guy that they trust, a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, Very important hires. This is going to be just one more. If this starts to become a trend, it's going to be one more just extremely important hire. It's going to have to be someone that these coaches trust with their livelihood, because if they're the guy that's in charge of getting you players fails, then you're collecting your buyout check in 2 or 3 years, right? So it's going to be fascinating to see how that role develops and who's kind of pioneering that role as we look for the next couple of years.
I agree. I think these CEO models are going to become more and more prevalent. It's going to have to operate like an NFL franchise, right? I mean, the GM does not have his fingerprints on the day to day. He can't. If you're going to be an effective GM, a CEO, you cannot be the smartest person in the room for every single fire that you're trying to put out. You have to have people in place that you know, that you trust, and that you expect to handle things without you having to ever hear about them, other than in a debrief, right? I think that's the model that we're moving towards, and I would be so curious to know the structure that Georgia, that Alabama, that Ohio State has. Which, by the way, just wrapping up the Ryan Day topic, 39-3 is his Big Ten record, and every Buckeye fan wants him kicked out of town. It's just it's hilarious to me. I know that game means everything, right? Especially with the playoff on the line. But 39-3, folks, like that is that's an impressive stat no matter who.
It'll be fascinating to see how he does in the playoff every year, because Ohio State's not going to miss the playoff very often in a 12-team format. So, he almost got Georgia last year. He's 0-3 against Michigan, but 150-yard kick away from probably winning a national title last year. I don't think TCU would have put up much of a fight against Ohio State either. So, it's a fascinating case study. We'll see how he does when the field's expanded.
Gracious hip, how